Fall 2021 information session for continuing read students and their families. I'm just going to wait for a moment while attendees join the session, so hold tight for a second. It's good to see that we have quite a few folks joining us. So, as I said, just hold tight for a second and we'll get started in just a moment. All right. So I just wanted to let you know today's info session is being recorded so that you can share this information with other READ community members who could not join us today. So just as an FYI, we are recording it. So my name is Carnell McConnell Black. I use the pronouns he, him, his, and I serve as the Vice President for Student Life here at the college. So READ announced our plans for the fall term for 2021 on March 16th, including a return to primarily in-person instruction and also increased residence hall occupancy. So while we expect there will be a need to continue to follow sound COVID-19 prevention and our sound COVID-19 prevention and response plan that has been carefully managed by our COVID risk assessment group, our return to more normal operations will take time and access to vaccines and the risk levels of Multnomah County, and which is where READ is located, into consideration. So to be sure, many details will be clarified as national, state, and local situations with the pandemic continue to evolve. And as I said, this session will be recorded and we'll add it to the resources for students and family members page for your future reference. So to get started, I would like to share with you the format of today's info session. It's being held as a webinar, which means attendees are in listen mode only with the ability to ask questions of the panel via the chat function. Individuals you'll see in a moment will be introducing folks that you'll be able to ask questions of folks and as they come up. If you have questions that you would like again to ask the panel, just use that chat function. We'll address as many questions as we can throughout the session via private response in the chat or by forwarding your question to the appropriate individual to respond to you at a later time. So we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. The session will also address academics, registering for fall classes, course formats, accommodating students who may need to quarantine or isolate themselves. We'll talk a little bit about COVID-19 guidelines for returning to the campus this fall, a little bit around housing and residence life operations and programs. And again, we still have some plans as it relates to testing, quarantine, tracing, public health behavior expectations. So we've got quite a bit that we're going to try to cover today in our 60 minutes. Again, we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. If we don't get through them all, please know that you can still reach out to student-life@read.edu and we will get back to you. So as you know, that's a great way if you have questions to get them answered. I'm joined today by a number of wonderful colleagues, and I'm going to actually have them introduce themselves now. So Hugh, you're first up.
Hi, I'm Hugh Porter, Vice President of College Relations and Planning and co-chair of the COVID Risk Assessment Group.
Hi there, my name is Madison Reithman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the COVID-19 response coordinator here at Reed College.
Hi, I'm Britt Hoover. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Support.
I'm Nora McLaughlin. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the registrar here at Reed.
Hello, families. I'm Julie Maxfield. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Associate Dean of Students for Academic Life.
Hi, I'm Amy Shuckman. I use she and her pronouns. I'm the Associate Dean for Student and Campus Life, which means I oversee residence life, student engagement, and orientation.
Hello, families. I'm Alice Hara. I'm the director of the Center for Life Beyond Reed, which at Reed means Career, Graduate, Pre-Professional, and Fellowships Advising Center. Glad to be with you.
Thank you all. So again, as you see, we got a fabulous group of folks who will be able to answer lots of questions for you. So we're going to go actually start with COVID operations and student support. And as I said earlier, Reed's response to the pandemic has really altered our regular mode of operations for this past academic year. So even though we've altered things, we still have, I feel like, demonstrated that we are resilient, we are an adaptable community, and doing things that we probably would have never thought we would be doing, but yet we're still making it through. Wearing masks, testing twice a week, which resulted in really a low rate here on campus. And as you know, there are lots of things that we can't even display on our COVID-19 data dashboard, but there's a lot of stuff there as well. So I'm just again proud of the faculty and staff and the students who really took a tremendous amount of care for each other and the entire community. So I'm going to invite Vice President Hugh Porter and Madison Reithman to talk a little bit about our approach and experience as it relates to testing, tracing, training, and things of that nature that are still evolving during the pandemic.
Hello again. I empathize with your position. I have a daughter in college. I've been on the other side of the webinar, so to speak. I want to reassure you that we operate with your children's education, health, and safety in mind at all times. So I've been asked to address what about our plans for the fall, why would they change, and talk about vaccination. So the good news is that unlike last year, we actually have evidence. We've been operating in some of the worst times of the pandemic. We've managed to do so safely. We and public health understand better what the main risks are and are not. And so we can make some real choices here. So another piece is that we now have a year of experience of working with this Oregon Governor, Kate Brown, with the health authorities in Multnomah County. And we have some experience of working with them. And I think we've developed with both the state and the local authorities some real credibility in terms of the way we're able to operate. We also know some things about the restrictions that are most difficult for our students on campus. And I know that folks in student life will speak about this. But we know also how students are able to behave. I think one of the things that was said was that students can't possibly follow any of these guidelines and restrictions. Well, the students have actually been fabulous at reading. So that has allowed us to have things like the kinds of informal gatherings for all of us who are fortunate to go to college. We remember that as an essential part of what we did there and how we learned. So, we have mental health firmly in mind as we're going through our plans for the fall. So second, we've really developed some competencies. We know how to do testing. We know how to do contact tracing, and Madison will talk more about these, and she's done a lot of work to train us to do these things. We know how to isolate students and have quarantine when that's necessary, which thankfully this year has not been necessary often. We know how to do health assessment, and we do it daily. We know how to notify people when they report that they're not feeling well. And we've vastly improved public health, again, with Madison's help. We were a much healthier place. I was reflecting today, I have not, knock wood, had a cold all year. That's never happened to me. And we know how to encourage good behaviors. I think all of you may have noticed that we had some different protocols about the way we implemented testing and follow-up, and those were very successful. We have very high participation rate in testing. So our plans for the fall, we're planning, as many colleges are, with optimism that we will be closer to normal. We're not planning that we're going to be completely normal. We are, for instance, keeping a residence hall open so that if we need an isolation space, we will have one. The county has not changed its risk assessment levels, and I can post those. Maybe I'll just post those here and somebody else can get them to all of you, because I'm not going to be able to talk and walk at the same time. But but we expect that they will, or that those what are now sort of regulatory matters will become guidance. And so we'll post that link, and you can take a look at where we're operating now, which is in the high risk category within Multnomah County. And we're obviously hoping that that changes. That doesn't change, we will adjust our operations accordingly. But everybody really wants the same things, which is for us to be able to get us as a society, we get back to some degree of normal that is safe. And we're obviously optimistic that vaccines will do that. On vaccines, we've had a lot of discussion in the risk assessment group about vaccine requirement. The college has not decided at this date to have a vaccine requirement. There are something like 36 colleges at this point that have decided that they will have a vaccine requirement. There are lots of things that they are confronting that we will confront, and you confront whether or not you have a vaccine requirement. The state of Oregon has a law that allows people to not be vaccinated for a pretty long list of reasons, and we won't be able to tell those people that they must be vaccinated just because they're at Reed. So that is a challenge we won't overcome. We also do want to collect information on who's vaccinated so that we have some ability to assess how that's going, and we're working on a process to do that now. Oregon initially was a little slow in getting vaccinated. For instance, I'm just one shot in. I think many of my friends and family are all the way through by now. So we're still moving through this process. It's very well run in Oregon, and I have no reason to believe that really by sometime in May, we won't be through the college age population. We have, as some of you know, we've created the ability to run a vaccine clinic. It's been approved by the state. We've done a lot of work to prepare ourselves to vaccinate people. We have not been given any vaccine supply. I think the fact that Johnson & Johnson was paused as an available vaccine probably got in the way of that. But we are quite confident that we will have supplies, so that, for instance, students from either areas in the country or from countries outside of the US who weren't able to get a vaccine would be able to get one in our health and counseling center. I'm trying to see. So, so there are uncertainties about the future, and I think all of us have gotten a little bit used to dealing with uncertainty, but it's still awfully challenging. And there's things we don't know, and things we can know only by inference. For instance, by looking at Israel, which is something like a 62% rate of vaccination. But we're going to be finding out, and as we did this year, we will respond to the situation as it develops. But again, we're optimistic that it's going to be possible to be closer to what Reed would normally look like. So I'll pause there. I think Madison is up next, and I'll try and look at your questions.
Great, thanks for the introduction, Hugh. So I just wanted to cover a couple things about our COVID response plan going through the end of spring, over summer, and then into the fall semester. And while there is still a lot up in the air with how fall will look, we are still committed to maintaining the safe spaces we have effectively created this past year. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have designed our COVID prevention and response plan in this multifaceted kind of approach, which really allows us to have layers of safety in our operation. You know, all of these things like masking, social distancing, surveillance testing, et cetera. All of those things are our layers of protection. And now, with the anticipated hopeful decline of COVID transmission as the layer of COVID vaccination is added, we are hoping that we can start pulling back some of these other more restrictive layers. But of course, that is really going to depend on a lot of different things. Most prominently, what COVID transmission looks like come fall, and what community vaccination rates look like come fall. That's information we don't have right now. So instead, our our planning for the fall has been more flexible than ever, with plans A, B, C, D, all the way through Z, so that we can continue to inform our practices with the latest science and evidence, rather than trying to establish a plan that we're going to do for sure when we have really no idea what things are going to look like in 1, 2, 3, 4 months. Since the start of the pandemic, as Carnell mentioned, we have had we've done an astounding job on campus of reducing transmission. Since the start of the spring semester on January 25th, we have actually only had 9 confirmed cases of COVID-19 among community members on campus. For context, in that same period of time, we conducted over 360,000 tests on campus. For those of you doing the math, that comes out to a positivity rate of about 0.0025%. So Carnell mentioned we can't display it on our data dashboard. That's why. So we've been really, really successful when it comes to preventing transmission, and we plan to continue that with the pieces that we think were really successful in that. That high level of surveillance testing, quarantining close contacts and cases. We actually developed this year our own internal case and contact investigation protocols, which mimic those that are used at local and state health departments, but actually allow us to do a more timely and more specific investigation, as well as provide more direct and ongoing support for the impacted students. In regards to vaccination, our Health and Counseling Center is preparing to distribute vaccines to Reed community members once we receive it from the state. We want to eliminate as many barriers to vaccination as possible through education, promotion, and support. We will be tracking vaccination rates across Reed community, and decisions about what other COVID prevention measures we have in place will be heavily impacted by what Reed vaccination rates look like. One of the #1 questions I get about testing and vaccination is, why would we still test if we think everybody's vaccinated, right? Well, the first and obvious response to that is we don't know if everybody's vaccinated, right? As you mentioned, there are certainly exemptions at play where individuals do not have to be vaccinated, or whether that's for a medical reason, a religious reason, a personal reason, there's always going to be gaps in that. But what we do hope is to get a vaccination coverage that still protects that hopefully very small group of people who can't get a vaccine by having the rest of the community vaccinated. The other reason we would still want to do testing on campus, even if we have high levels of vaccination, is that we are still learning about the vaccine. Studies show that the COVID vaccine is very effective at preventing severe illness and death, and that's great. That's our first and foremost priority. But at this time, scientists are still studying just how effective the COVID vaccine is at preventing the disease entirely, or at how well it limits one's ability to spread the virus to others. So if vaccinated people are still able to spread it to others, and we still have some unvaccinated people on campus, we have to have a testing program in place so that we can identify any disease on campus. So once again, that is really going to be evolving and developing as we learn more this summer about the vaccine and about what it looks like in our community. Right now, we are encouraging all of our community members to let us know when they get vaccinated. Faculty and staff have been excitedly sending us their records and telling us that they've been getting vaccinated as eligibility is opened up. And any students who are getting vaccinated now can upload their test results into the student health portal Medicat. If there are any questions about how to do that, the Health and Counseling Center staff are happy to help kind of walk you through that or assist with that process. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it, I think, back over to Carnell to segue into our next section.
Thank you, Madison. So one of the other things that I think we all know that we've been living with, and one of the challenges we've been living with during the pandemic, is really how this has all impacted our mental health. And I think we know this has been especially important and impactful on our students. So our counselors through the HCC have been very busy this spring supporting our students, and we're excited to announce the expansion of supportive resources through the engagement of Protocol plus partner TogetherAll. And TogetherAll actually creates a safe environment for online peer-to-peer support where students can share their emotions and experiences with others who share similar experiences and identities. And this peer-to-peer support is overseen by clinically certified professionals. And so with our partnership, when student support needs escalate, they are connected specifically with our counselors. And so it's an opportunity to provide a quick intervention, voice-to-voice intervention beyond just the peer online engagement. And so we're really excited about that. In addition, we've also hired Brianna Hayes, who will be a counselor focusing, a staff counselor focusing on Black and African American students. And we also have in the final stages of hiring our intersectional counselor as well to provide support for students whose identities intersect. So we're really excited about the opportunities to provide support for students who are coming from those identities. So I actually want to turn a little bit of time now over to Britt Hoover, who serves as, again, as our Assistant Dean for Student Support. And she's been actually overseeing Reed's Isolation and Quarantine Student Support Program. So Britt, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cornell. So during the fall 2021 semester, we will continue to operate a holistic and supportive isolation and quarantine program for students. Regarding isolation, students who test positive for COVID-19 will be instructed to isolate by the Health and Counseling Center. If a student lives on campus, they will be temporarily relocated to a designated residence hall, the same that we've been using this year. And while they're in isolation, they will receive delivered meals through our wellness meal program. For students who live off campus and test positive for COVID-19, they should plan to isolate themselves in their off-campus residence. For both on-campus and off-campus students, they will receive dedicated academic and personal support and regular consultation with members of the health and counseling team. So we'll regularly check in with any student, regardless if they live on or off campus, by phone and text, and help them problem solve issues that might arise from being in isolation. For students who may be exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID-19, they will be instructed to quarantine. Because on-campus students may have a roommate this fall, students who are instructed to quarantine due to potential exposure will be temporarily relocated to a designated residence hall. That is different from this year. Students in quarantine will also be given active support, regardless if they live on or off campus, throughout their time in quarantine. As you might understand by now, students in isolation or quarantine will be unable to attend in-person class, work, meetings, or social events until they're formally cleared. But we will, like I said, help students problem solve, continue to have access to the classroom and to work virtually. So again, we're planning to continue to offer those supports to students. I also just want to briefly mention, for other student concerns and challenges, the Reed Care team continues to provide proactive support and guidance to students. Students, faculty, staff, and family members can refer a student to the care team by filling out an online care referral form or by emailing the care team at reed.edu. I'll drop this contact information in the chat in a moment. Thank you.
All right. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about academic programs, support in the academic experience. And so first I would like to invite Nora, who is our amazing registrar and also soon to be retiring registrar, to talk a little bit about registering for fall classes, course formats, accommodating students who may need to, again, quarantine or isolate themselves in the academic calendar for 2021. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Nora.
All right, happy to be here. So as our students know, the schedule of classes for next year went live last Thursday, a day early, and advising has been underway really since that began. I even got emails over the weekend from faculty who are obviously talking to students. They can see the instructional mode. Most of that will be in person. I'll cover that in a moment. They can see applicability to group requirements and can search on all sorts of items. So there's good information out there for them. For fall, we do anticipate most students will be in Portland, but we do have a set of classes that are either remote or in person with remote access, particularly for international students, because we still anticipate that there are some visa challenges for those students to get here. So, and just to give you the rough percentages, about 81% of our classes will be in person, and another 19 to 20% will be either remote or in person with remote access. So there will be some flexibility there, but certainly not the kind of half and half that we did this year. I mean, our students and our faculty want to be in that classroom together talking about their ideas and what they're exploring. Registration for next year opens tomorrow, and we do that with a day one. So students can pick their very favorite class in fall and in spring. And we do this to make sure that courses with high demand are distributed broadly. So just the person who gets up the earliest doesn't get the high demand classes. And in fact, we start at midday because not all of our students get up early. Friday morning, students will be able to enroll in a full slate of classes for fall and spring. And registration will be open over the summer. So as students kind of fine tune their schedule, sometimes classes open up and they can, if they're on a wait list, they can get into a class that they had hoped to be in. Continuing students and students returning from leave were notified April 8th to schedule time with their advisor, to meet with their advisor this week. The advisor gives them a registration PIN. This is our way of making sure they check in with an advisor, and then the advisor can give them the PIN so they can enroll. Sometimes students miss this step. It's not unusual for me on the morning of registration to have a student call and say, oh my gosh, my advisor didn't give me the PIN. Well, when did you reach out to your advisor? Anyway, so a couple of students missed that step, but registration is ongoing all summer. So they're fine there. We do know from departments and faculty that students have been checking on the schedule, planning their schedule. They even identified a conflict the departments hadn't anticipated. We rescheduled the class so that those students were going to be able to take the two very, very important classes. And just a reminder, students can check their degree progress on Atlas anytime, even without an advisor, and explore different majors and different ways to different concentrations and all that sort of thing. So we encourage students to do that because it's another way, in addition to talking to their advisor, that they can look at what their options are. The academic calendar is set for next year, and it's out there on our website. In fact, this year, next year, and the following year are detailed on the website. We will start the Monday before Labor Day in the fall, and we'll finish on December 16th. Fall break, especially for those of you who are new to Read this year, is in mid-October after 7 weeks of class. And then Thanksgiving is a 2-day holiday with a 2-day weekend, so a 4-day weekend. We do not take a full day off at Thanksgiving, as some schools do, because we have that full fall break. This year, we did combine those two together, so I just want to make sure folks know that Thanksgiving is a shorter break than fall break. About students who end up in isolation or quarantining, faculty have been asked to have a plan for next year. And for students who have to quarantine or find themselves needing to isolate. This isn't that different from pre-COVID, when a student had to step out due to illness or some other emergency. Actually, faculty have managed this for a number of years and unfortunately had more practice of that this year, but I think they understand how to do that. Missing class doesn't mean the work doesn't have to be done, but it does mean that faculty will work with students individually to catch up, to keep up, so that they don't lose out. Finally, we are working with students and faculty to update advisor assignments. Every year, some of our faculty go on sabbatical or they go on leave, and particularly for a student in their first year looking at their sophomore year, and it's like, oh my gosh, my advisor is going to be on sabbatical. We've already talked to faculty, we've notified students, and we encourage them to make that change, but then we will step in and help them make that change. We want to make sure that if they have an idea, they pursue that themselves, but then we will help them with that process. So we are looking forward to a terrific fall semester. And I will turn it back to Carnell.
Awesome. Thank you, Nora. So I would like next up Julie, who oversees academic support, disability, and accessibility resources and international student services. And so Julie, can you talk a little bit about returning from leaves, new changes to the tutoring program for the fall? How will support international students who want to continue their studies at Reed but are not able to get a visa appointment on a timely basis? So I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Carnell. Yeah, so again, Julie Maxfield. And the areas I oversee are parts of student life that connect pretty directly with the academic program. And so That might mean working with students that are returning from time away or needing to establish accommodations or support for their academic lives. So I know lots of folks did take time off during the pandemic, and we're hoping that you're coming back to us in the fall. Students returning from time away are eligible to register now, or if they took a medical leave, they'll need to go through that process to return. But things are happening, and folks are, getting excited about the fall. You're welcome to schedule a meeting with the dean if you would like to talk about your reentry and strategies and resources that we can set you up with for a successful return. Sometimes people want to update their accommodations. If you're a student on a visa, you already know that there's a long planning period that comes in advance of showing up here. So that's all happening now for some students. And if you want to join us again, let us know and we'll help you with that. There's also a question in there about international students that might not be able to come back to us. We're hoping for the best, and we'll see how it goes, but we've made a plan to allow for some evening classes that better meet the time zones that are very far away. Some remote programming and Zoom support will remain available for those folks. And students who are hopeful about coming back but might not make it exactly on time are encouraged to let us know. In some cases, a late arrival to the semester might be the way to go. So we're supporting folks with the ongoing immigration advising changes that are happening, and it's always a work in progress there. Lastly, academic support, the area that I oversee, runs a tutoring program. It's a really great resource for peers to connect and build academic community at Reed. We kept it going even during the pandemic via Zoom, and we're excited to keep it going again in the fall under a new model. So the tutoring program is changing a little in that students can self-identify as being interested in the job versus waiting for a faculty recommendation. So it makes it a little bit more professional, a little more like a regular job. And we're upping the training to make sure folks are feeling really confident about that work. So good stuff happening there. Students can also work with professional staff in academic support if they're looking for individualized coaching support to get better at things like time management, adjusting to life back in person, right? There are different skills for Zoom than for real life, real in-person learning. And so that transition is something that coaching might be able to help you with. Test taking, long-term project management, all that kind of stuff. So, so if you're a student who's wondering about your pathway through Reed or questions about getting support, I'm happy to point you in the right direction or connect you to the resources I just mentioned.
Thank you, Julie. So next up, I'm gonna talk a little bit about, I'm not gonna talk about it, but Amy's gonna talk a little bit about housing. But I wanna give a little bit of framing around campus and residence life planning. So as I stated, housing will be returning to regular occupancy for the next academic year, and students will be able to preference living in a single room or with a roommate in a divided double room. One of our residence halls will remain offline for isolation, as Britt articulated, in quarantine spaces as needed. And so I would like to kind of introduce Amy to talk a little bit more about residential plans and deadlines for the fall and what students can actually expect when they come back to campus and when living on campus.
Great, thank you. So I dropped a link in the chat as Cornell was introducing me. One of the big things I want parents and families and students to know right now is that the returning student housing application process is open right now. So that means students can submit an application to be assigned housing for next year. That application closes this Friday, so please make sure you take some time to look at the information on the website. When you're applying for housing, as Carnell said, you give your preferences of buildings, but also the room type that you were interested in, whether it be a single or divided double. Additionally, you can link up with a roommate. I know some students are really excited about the possibility of living with roommates again after having been in a single this past year. And one of the things that I am pretty proud of is that we are going to be able to tell students their housing assignments by April 30th. It was very important for us because of so much insecurity and so much kind of just wandering and wondering what may happen in the next year. We thought it was super important to try to get these housing assignments out to students as soon as possible so they can make some informed decisions for next year. So students will find out their housing assignments Friday, April 30th, and they'll have up until June 1st to cancel without any penalty or anything like that. One of the other things that we have heard a lot from students is they really want to understand what the behavior expectations are for living on campus. And I just dropped in the chat some what is our COVID addendum for next year that we worked on closely with Craig and Madison and others. And the things that I really want to highlight about this are two specific changes that we were able to make for next year. One is that Reedies will be able to have other Reed community members enter their residence hall. This past year, you weren't able to go into a residence hall that you did not live in. So we're really pleased to be able to offer this opportunity because things have gone so well this past year. Additionally, we are also saying that it is okay to leave campus and travel and do things as needed, as long as you're following COVID-19 kind of practices and regulations. Other kind of questions that I think we've been getting a lot of about housing is particularly when returning students can come back to campus. And so we have set those arrival dates to allow for testing or no testing. The dates will stay the same. And so the arrival date for returning students is Friday, August 27th. And as we start to understand more about specifically what our testing processes look like in the fall, we will provide more information for students so they will be able to make some additional plans. One of the other big things that we're super excited about is we definitely are planning to return to more in-person programming. We know students are very eager to build communities in person, whether that be in their residence hall or other activities, great fun events on campus or even off campus. We also will plan to maintain some virtual programs. We have found that students have found that to be very accessible, particularly like if they live off campus, or as Julie and Nora discussed, we may also have some students that are studying remotely as well. So I think that covers everything that I was going to, but I will turn it back over to Carnell.
Thank you, Amy. All right, so I want to now turn to how to make the most of your summer. And, you know, summer break just starts almost 3 weeks from now, and COVID has made planning for productive use of this time a bit challenging. So the Center for Life Beyond Reed is an advocate for students utilizing these breaks for deep investment into their growth, their skills, their experiences with their community of purpose. So I'm gonna actually turn it over to Alice to talk a little bit about CLBR.
Thank you, Carnell. And I just dropped in the chat. This is how students find resources and make appointments with us. So this world changed so much, but so little, I was amazed, changed for us in terms of our approach. Students still need to have a sense of purpose and a sense of self, and they still need to learn how to plan to express those. So purposeful planning can take place in 3 summers and 4 breaks. It's a great time to really gain clarity around your community of purpose. And what we mean by that is what lights you up, not what do you want to do for the rest of your life, but what lights you up right now. It's a time to gain skills like planning or experience in a field, learning how to write your resume, and then creating a community or connections, because it's not enough to know how to write a resume, you have to know who to send it to. And then just gaining the confidence to navigate workplaces and other areas. So 3 things that I would say. It starts with why. We never start with what do you want to do. We start with your why, with your sense of purpose. That can be done anytime now through the summer. We meet you where you are. You can have a strong plan, you can have no plan. You can have a sense of purpose, you can have no idea where to start. In fact, we enjoy that the most. So we really want to make sure that students feel like they can come to us without a plan, without even knowing the answers to what comes next. And the final thing to answer Carnell directly is it's not too late to make a post-bac plan or to make a summer plan for 2021. I was looking through Handshake, which is one of the things that my team does, is curate a database of jobs and internships. And from Oak Ridge to Los Alamos Labs to Argonne, Portland Art Museum, Denver, Berkeley, and MoMA Art Museums, the Senate, City of Portland, the county, Oregon Health and Science University, and their clinics, Fulbright, Davis Peace Prize. These are all examples of things that we can work on now, either a job shadow, a clinical experience, information sessions. These are internships that were posted recently, jobs that have been posted recently. So through Reading Week and all throughout the summer, we'll have programs on crafting your narrative, on senior boot camp. That's one that we run for seniors 7 times a year. And how to apply to grad school, how to use databases. We'll give you a little LinkedIn profile audit. But mostly also practicing for virtual interviews. What does that mean? So all of those things will be available all summer. And the resources that we have are one-on-one professional advising all summer. It's done virtually right now. During the school year, we have peer career advisors. We do drop-ins throughout the summer as well. We have an employer recruiter who is curating jobs and internships on Handshake, which is Reed's posting platform. And mostly it's just a very personalized and customized conversation that we have with you. And, the main thing I want you to leave is we've got your back. Come in without answers or questions, and just know that, more than 93% of the students find meaningful and purposeful work, grad school, or fellowships 6 months after graduation. So please use Beyond Read at read.edu if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, so finally, I want to talk a little bit about, will there be a return to noon fall at Reed? Everyone's yearning to return to some normalcy, but we know that this virus may continue to complicate our lives and campus operations for some time to come. Hugh, can you share a little bit of what will guide the college's planning for events and social gatherings and related activities for the fall?
Sure. Of course, we'll follow state and county guidance, and we'll continue to do so. It's hard to predict where that goes. I would expect that to change from, again, as I said earlier, regulation to recommendation. We'll second be guided by our own experience of the virus and what's risky. And our experience has been is that when we plan for events, they've been able to be very successful. I mean, in some ways, a class is an event. And as far as we know, we have not had transmission in a classroom. Informal events are where we and everybody will struggle. We've had success, for instance, in residence hall common rooms where we have a good sense of how people have been participating in testing, that we've not seen transmission in those spaces, even though we've been allowing students to gather. I think what is going to remain really difficult, and this is disappointing, I'm a musician by training, is the really large events. We're not really clear, if we're going to be able to have our regular, band or concert with 200 people in one of our spaces. That remains undetermined. However, I will tell you that in Multnomah County, there are performing arts organizations that are planning to offer concerts this summer, and that's true next fall. And assuming those people go ahead, we will as well, and we'll have those kinds of activities. The riskiest activities that we've seen have been around eating, and so larger events, or we like to do gatherings where people get to eat together. It's a basic human activity. I don't know to the extent that that's going to be possible. What we'll discover. Again, restaurants are now open in Portland. I think they're at 25% capacity, or they 50%. And so people are eating out together, and so the county is discovering, we are discovering kind of what risks those create. So again, we're all learning as we go, and we will respond to the information that Madison outlined as it comes in. That's what I'd have to say, Cornell.
Awesome. Thank you. So we've come to the space where we are at about 5:47, and we probably have a few minutes to have additional questions from folks. So if we've been answering questions throughout our time today, even in the chats and things of that nature. So if there are other questions that piqued your interest from the information that folks said, I would encourage you to plop them into the chat feature, and we can answer some of those questions as they come in. So there's a question about, will we be tracking and publishing what percentage of students are vaccinated? Right now, again, and I'll actually let Madison take that one. Go for it, Madison.
Okay, that sounds good. The short answer is yes, we have plans to, at least at a very minimum, have an understanding of, on an aggregate level, what our vaccination rates are among people who are coming to campus. That includes students, staff, and faculty. A lot of how that looks will depend on kind of what Reed decides about requiring a vaccine versus how we decide to track it. So that's another one of those programs that we have kind of a plan A, B, C, D, and E for. But to some extent, at a bare minimum, we will be tracking the percentage of folks across campus who are vaccinated. And we are exploring if it is possible to build that into our current COVID database, or I'm sorry, dashboard on our website, so that we can share that with the community as well.
I'm taking a look at questions that are still coming in. There was a question, Madison, that I'll probably give you as well around, again, will COVID vaccines be required? I think you answered that earlier, but if you want to remind folks who joined late.
Yeah, I can certainly touch on that again. So that's still a conversation we're having. There are certainly schools who have come out and said, yes, we're going to require the vaccine for maybe just students or for everyone, or no, we're not going to require it. At this time, we have not decided to require it, but we are still exploring that option. I, as a public health person, am very optimistic that our community will be very receptive to vaccination, and that we can achieve a really high vaccination rate among our community with education, outreach, and removing barriers to vaccination for folks. But certainly there are benefits to requiring a vaccine in ensuring that safety as well. I'm a huge vaccination advocate, so I'm on that side, but certainly want to make sure that we're treating all of our community members equitably. And we know that there are reasons that folks may choose or may not be able to get a vaccine for various reasons. So we are exploring kind of the pros and cons of that, and we'll share updates with you guys as we have more information about where we've landed on that. But just know that it is an ongoing conversation, and we're evaluating all of the evidence before making a decision.
Thank you. So there was a question about, has the gym been rebuilt yet? And it has not been rebuilt yet. It's going to probably take some time to rebuild. But we will, the sports center will be open this fall, and so students will still be able to utilize the spaces there. Again, President Bilger has put together an exploratory group to actually take a look at what we could do and what the possibilities are for the campus and for our students and for the campus community around the actual gyms themselves. So look for more information as we continue to work through that. But again, the sports center will be open, and so there will be opportunities to still work out and things of that nature in the facility.
If I could jump in, I saw a theme in a couple of different questions that folks had posted about, like, what do I do if I'm not totally sure if I'm coming back? Or what if I change my mind about this? Or how do I plan for spring? Because that seems really far away. So I just wanted to say, students are always welcome to discuss their plans individually with the Dean in Student Life or with their academic advisor, because there are some particulars for each student. But also that it's okay to make a optimistic decision now and change it later. So if you're thinking you would ideally like to be on campus and in person, go ahead and pick out a set of classes and pick out, register for housing. And then if your plans change and you're not able to get here, or you need to do something different, Solar is open through the summer. You could switch over to some online versions of classes if you needed to. And then the spring is its whole other thing that you can get to when you get to it. So we recognize that sometimes it's hard to plan that far out and want to help you with it along the way. So my recommendation is grab the schedule or the version of life you'd like to see in the fall. And if we need a plan B, we can, but if you don't grab that, then it might be hard to do later. So.
All right. There are other questions.
There's one on library access.
Library.
It just says, what would in-person library access look like? And also PE classes.
Gotcha.
I answered PE.
So you share that, you mind sharing that again, Nora, about PE classes?
Sure. The question was, what will PE classes look like? And it's a variety, and it's in the schedule of classes. And I put that link in the chat. So there will be some in-person classes, and I'm sure they will be very careful about what those options are. But the PE classes for fall are in the schedule. We don't typically schedule the spring classes until later.
I think there was, again, for the library, we can get you some more information about what our plans are for the library if they're more detailed. But again, the library will be still open in the fall. And again, as our space, the regulations and guidance around space and how many folks we can have in spaces changes, we'll be sure to update the campus community on those. There was also a question around services available this summer for students who are remaining in Portland over the summer. And so, again, I think Hugh articulated that, June 1 is when we'll have campus will be back open. But again, one of the things is that we'll still provide support for students who are needing, again, the mental health piece, so that Together All expansion of the health services will give our students an opportunity to utilize that platform and connect again, whether it be just ongoing or in the need of crisis situations and things of that nature. I know that there may be a handful of students who also will be doing research and things of that nature, and so that will be there as well. Again, we'll plan to have limited services. We'll have food services, things of that nature, but it will be limited services over the course of the summer. So let's see if there.
So a question about move-in, Colonel?
Amy, you want to talk a little bit about move-in?
Sure. The short answer is we're not quite sure yet. That is definitely something that's under consideration that we're really talking about, like what does the move-in process look like for students regarding testing, and what does the move-in process look like for parents and families? Are we inviting them on campus? Will we be doing something more hybrid related? And so it's something that we know is very important. We're trying to, as Madison and I think Hugh and Carnell talked about, we're really trying to understand kind of the science and get more information so we can make some really kind of educated decisions about what that looks like. I believe Carnell or Hugh are also going to talk about future communications, which might help illuminate when we might know a few more pieces of this information.
All right. So, so as we start to kind of wrap things up, so again, one of the things that you will continuously hear from us, again, May 6th, we'll be emailing out regarding the end of spring term and fall 2021 plans. June 15th, we'll be emailing out regarding, again, the plans itself and update to the COVID-19 Prevention and Response Plan website, so you'll get information there. And again, we'll follow up again come July 29th with additional updates as it relates to operations and things of that nature. So we'll be staging, communication consistently throughout the course of the summer. Of course, our teams are here and available to answer questions in between that. But we will be making sure that our websites, our offices have all the information that we have. And if we don't have an answer, we'll tell you we don't have it, and we'll let you know when to expect one as well. Again, I want to just say thank you to everyone for your participation, the questions that you all asked. As I said, we will be recording this. It is recorded, it has been recorded, and so it'll be on the resources for students and family members page. And again, a big thank you to our panelists as well for participating this evening. So if you do have questions or need anything else, feel free to submit those questions to student-life@reed.edu, and we'll be able to respond back to you and get someone on those questions for you. So again, thank you and have a great evening.